only in your follow-up what you call the adjourned meeting, which never happened anyway because you're always present.
Yeah,
But you
that's
have
correct,
that
yes.
safeguard. And in fact,
Okay.
additional safeguard, Mr. Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, under Section 5 on quorum, paragraph A, in all regular or special meeting of stockholders, 51% of the total issued and outstanding capital stock, which shall at least include SGHK or its duly authorized representative, must be present or represented. You need that one Chinese director in every board meeting. It's in your bylaws, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, that's what I'm pointing at po, no? Apologies, Attorney Sagayo. Let me finish po my line of questioning. Earlier, there were already the corporate gymnastics that were employed to avoid public ownership and scrutiny, public ownership, public enjoyment of fruits, public control. And aside from that, as if that was not enough to go through 3 layers of corporate gymnastics, they still have in their bylaws to ensure that there is a Chinese director present. I hope you understand, this is not xenophobia, but we've already gone time and time again about the issues of national security po. And ako personally, this was very alarming. And the most blatant violation of the franchise that I've seen so far. Mr. Chair, I think I'm more than 5 minutes, but I'll leave it at that. I think we still have some issues that, to be clear with them, if I still have time, then I'd like to ask some of our other resource persons, but if my time is up.
Minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be a little anticlimactic po, no? Kasi I just want to, now that I was able to say my piece, I want to go back siguro po kay Attorney Matibag po, no? And you mentioned earlier that remotely, there were instances in which they were able to influence our system grid. Can you please elaborate?
Well, it was reported to us that there was a problem in the power grid and they need a technician to address it. So instead of sending the technician, they relay the problem in China, in Nanjing, so that it will be remotely repaired. But of course, it was not recorded properly and all. But that one instance when it's still Transco is operating, nangyari din po yun, na nasira, pero hindi na po pumunta yung technician, remotely ginawa. So if something that can be done remotely, definitely na i-repair, pwede ring sirain remotely.
Sir, you mentioned po na it was not recorded. There's no history of this incident.
That's the point na nga kasi hindi na nakakapasok ang Transco. In fact, hindi lang nabanggit kanina ni Ms. Dina na yung sinasabing inspection namin doon sa mga documents, hindi nga pwedeng maglabas ng Xerox copy, hindi pwedeng picturean. So, basahin nyo na lang. Can you just imagine voluminous documents na re-reviewin mo? Pumunta ka sa lugar na sinabi nila, tingnan mo doon. But before that, Mr. Chair, if I will be allowed, kasi meron lang sinabi si Atty. Sagayo na yung tungkol po doon sa decision ng ERC, na copy fairness ang Transco na hindi nag-object, we filed an objection. At ang sabi sa amin ng ERC, wala kaming karapatan na sumali doon sa usapin na yun. The legal officers of Transco are here that can be validated, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, former President Matibag. On another point, you mentioned yung 777, quite media soundbite po, no? Can you please explain to us po? At least I'm more interested in violations of the concession agreement. Could you please enlighten us, sir?
Well, this report was submitted, ito yung last hearing namin po sa Senado na noong February 3, 2020. So pinag-submit kami ng report ng paper. So we titled it 777, 7 power grid security issues, 7 reasons why NGCP contract with government is onerous, and 7 NGCP violation of the concession agreement. So if interested po kayo, Mr. Chair, sa violation, basahin ko na lang po isa-isa para mas madali po. Failure to comply with its initial public offering, yung pong sinasabi ninyo, yung obligation nila doon sa public offering, because our point of view at that time, very clear naman po yung wordings ng Section 8 ng franchise law, dispersal. Pag sinabi mong dispersal, you let go of it, papuntang public, hindi from one packet, punta lang sa kabilang packet. So yun po yung isa. Pangalawa po is violation of anti-dummy law. It's already been established na yung CTO noon is a Chinese national. And I hope na sabi, bibigay lahat sa inyo yung mga papel na nagsabi na sila ay pwedeng mag-empleyado kasi alam ko po, madami ng hearing na nangyari sa Senado at sinabing pinangako, wala pa pong lumalabas na kopya. Kaya medyo kanina, pasensya na po ulit, nakapagsalita ako ng lokohan because that's how I feel, exasperated na. 5 taon po naming nilalaban to. Ganun na nangyari. So violation of anti-dummy law, number 2. Number 3 is engaging in business without prior consent because under the concession agreement, any business na hindi po transmission of high voltage electricity, na yun lang po yung binigay sa kanila talaga, ay dapat ipaalam po sa PISAM, sa Transco, ay meron po silang mga nilagay na facilities doon na telecommunication, meaning they're already been engaging in telecommunication. Tapos number 4 po, non-compliance on separated audit accounts. Tapos abuse of improper exercise of power of eminent domain, yung SSS po na expropriation. Tsaka yung pong paglalagay ng mga in-expropriate na property sa pangalan nila, hindi po sa Transco. Yun po yung pang-anim, yung titling. Tapos yung pong receivable ng Transco noon, meron pong receivable na malaking halaga. Baling nangyari po kasi, nung nag-assume sila noong 2009, may mga collectibles pa na nung nabayaran nung sila na nandoon, hindi na binigay sa gobyerno. Yun po.
Thank you, sir. That's quite although I'm sure that some of them were contentious. I understand some of the arguments earlier was that it was well within the rights of the concession agreement. But I'm curious po, no, in relation to that. Thank you, sir. If I still have time, let's go to one follow-up question kay ERC Chair, Di Malanta. To the Honorable Chairman, you mentioned po earlier that in relation to the delays of the projects of the NGCP, sometimes the project proposal, including the timeline, would actually come from them rin po, no? And they fail to follow their own timeline. That would
Yes.
usually be the instance po,
Mr.
no?
Chair, opo, in all instances po,
All
timeline
instances.
nanggagaling po sa kanila. Kasama po yun sa application po nila.
And I find that interesting because I agree with my good colleague, the gentleman from CTO, my idol chairman, Rufus Rodriguez, and when he mentioned, at least in the ERC, understandably, when there's fault, when you're empowered by the law to take responsibility, you ensure that it happens. But likewise, ganun rin po yung nangyari sa NGCP. If I'm not mistaken, NGCP in their concession agreement was granted in Section 5.6, for example, documented property rights. They have the power to commence and pursue eminent domain proceedings for the purpose of acquiring documented property rights. They have the power to litigate, negotiate, settle, and otherwise resolve all adverse claims in accordance with Sections 5.7. And in 5.7 adverse claims, in the event that any person shall assert any right, title, or interest, some lines down, the concessionaire shall, at its own cost and expense, assert and otherwise defend the documented property rights as promptly as practicable. So all of this are, NGCP was armed to the teeth to proactively address. They had the sufficient authority to deal with this. And in fact, sila nga po yung nagbigay ng project proposal. Yet, in all instances, they failed to follow their own timelines po, no?
In most, hindi naman po sa lahat.
Most
in most
of the
lang po. And their authority to expropriate is also in their franchise, Mr. Chair.
Also in the franchise. So even then, in the same way that ERC was empowered to investigate, but for reasons known to them, they did not, NGCP also had the power to make sure that their timelines are kept, yet they did not. So that, together with the concession violations mentioned by former President Matibag, really raises questions po, no? And siguro po, for now, I want to hear more of Chairman Dan Fernandez's expose on the facts. Just one more thing po, I just like to go back po, no? Have we found yung public ownership po?
Mr. Chairman, before we go to this, may I just comment on the public dispersal of ownership? Just one comment on that. Kasi sa akin lang po kasi, Mr. Chairman, the provisions of our franchise is very clear. We were given those two options, IPO at NGCP level or a publicly listed company, listed with the PSE, which directly or indirectly owns 30% of NGCP. The right to choose was given to us by the law itself. Ang sa akin lang po, Mr. Chairman, sana hindi kami sisihin if we